Hello and welcome to the Holon Network podcast for December 15th of 2022. This week I have joining me...
Hey, I'm Digital Tinker.
And I'm Gatorbite. Yo, Digital! We're trying this thing over on YouTube. Hello and welcome to the Holon Network podcast for December 15th of 2020. Okay. Hey, now it's muted. Now we're fine. This is great. Learning pains as we go along the way. But hey, we've got things recorded. Our audio recording's working just fine, so worst case scenario, hey, now that there's going to be the video of the different stories that we usually go through and cover for this week. If you're joining us for the first time, welcome. Otherwise, Digital, what's going on with you this week?
Just you trying to give more data to Google.
Oh. How so?
Done that. Well, now we're on YouTube. So get all our voice data, all the video data.
Is Amazon any better?
Yeah, good point.
Okay. It's trying to spread that around with all the other AIs that are running out there. Might as well have a couple places where it's at so we can own our data and plant our flag, right? Or we're just going to go... Go ahead.
It's the Nintendo thing where if like you've got a video about a topic, like say something with Activision Blizzard, and you're playing their music, you play a little bit of Nintendo, so they both copyright claim it, and nobody gets money.
There you go. I mean, we could also look at PeerTube instances as well, so I am not opposed to any of them at this point. So
that's just going for the joke.
Yeah. Okay. So for the fun of it, we went through and updated the Darknet NG website. So if you have been missing being able to play the year-round CTF, you can absolutely go to darknet-ng.network, go check out and play our year-round CTF. You can see the intro video on that. Looks like I need to fix some CSS on one of the things, but we also have the Darknet community calendar that will also be having our upcoming projects that we're working on, whether it's Wednesday workshop nights, whether it's tuning in live for this if folks want to join us, and a slew of other things going on throughout the week. So anything that you want to talk about project-wise before we get started in our stories, or you want to save that for the end?
Nope, we can wait till the end for that.
Cool deal. Let's kick this thing off. So first thing that we like to go through and do is just review where things are at societally when it comes to a few items, including right now, starting off with Bitcoin being currently at $17,401.50. Gold per ounce is $1,787.50, and your crude oil per barrel is $72.31. Dogecoin, for the fun of it, is 0.08621 cents. With that, we'd like to move into this week in vulnerabilities, and as always, we like to go jump onto the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency site, where we go to the 2022 bulletins, going down to the weekly vulnerability summary for the week of December 5th. So at the time of recording, this is a little bit old, by about 10 days, but if you haven't had your patch window yet, these are things that we want to go through and highlight for things you should be watching out for. So as we're scrolling on down, the first one that I see popping up is Apache Camel, which the Camel LDAP component allows LDAP injection when using the filter option. Users are recommended to either move to the Camel Spring LDAP component, which is not affected, or upgrade to 3.14.6 or 3.18.4. CVSS score of a 9.8, CVE of 2022, 45046.
Well, it's a big long list of details embedded, but Cacti, the open source platform for monitoring, has a vulnerability where affected versions, a command injection vulnerability, allows an unauthenticated user to execute arbitrary code on a server running Cacti if a specific data source was selected for any monitored device. There's a whole lot of details in there if you want to get into it. That one's a 9.8 with CVE 2022 46169.
For those of you who are doing home lab support for friends and family, if you have recommended in the past using Avast antivirus, there has been some shifting and changing on who owns that, but long story short, there's a vulnerability you should be made aware of. So, a vulnerability within the malware removal functionality of Avast and AVG antivirus allowed an attacker to write access to the file system to escalate his privilege in certain scenarios. The issue was fixed with Avast and AVG antivirus versions 22.10. This was a CVSS score of an 8.8 and CVE of 2022 4173.
Some more D-Link updates, this time for the DHP-W310AV, DVG G5402SP, and DVG G5402SB. Those are all 9.8s and are command injection vulnerability.
Going along with different hardware, you've also got F5 Big IQ centralized management, and all versions of Big IP and Big IQ are vulnerable to cross-site request forgery, or CSRF, attacks through the iControl SOAP. Note that the software versions which have reached the end of technical support, or EOTS, are not evaluated. CVSS score of an 8.8, CVE of 2022 41622.
Fortinet's had a number of big issues this past week, with Forta ADC has a SQL injection, Forta Deceptor, insufficient logging vulnerability, and Forta Proxy, an authentication bypass by assumed immutable data vulnerability. There should be updates out for all of those, so if you're using any of them, make sure you patch.
All right, let's see what else we've got here. Google Android had a long list of different vulnerabilities. Looks like most of them are at 7.8s. So if you're running a Android device, check for your updates on there. If you're running a Google Pixel device or a first-party Google device, you should have those updates that you should go apply.
TensorFlow also snuck in there with a couple 9.1s. The make grappler function item takes arguments that determine the size of inputs and outputs. If the inputs given are greater than the 2 or equal to the size of the outputs, an out-of-bounds memory read or crash is triggered. Looks like that's the same for both of them. CVE's 2022 41902, CVE 2022 41910.
And we've also got a Google Chrome in there as well, with the type confusion in V8 of Google Chrome prior to 108.0.5359.94 allowed a remote attacker to potentially exploit heap corruption via a crafted HTML page. Chromium security severity is set for high, CVSS score is an 8.8, and CVE is 2022 4262.
Everyone hopping over to Mastodon may have triggered some development and issues. Versions through 4.0.2 allow attackers to cause a denial of service by creating bot accounts that follow attacker-controlled accounts on certain other servers associated with a wildcard DNS-A record, such that there is uncontrolled recursion or of attacker-generated messages. 7.5 and CV 2022 46405.
This is something that I've used in the past on both of these. The Markdown Preview Enhanced project, that is a plugin for both VS Code and Atom, was discovered in versions 0.6.5 and 0.19.6. They discovered a command injection vulnerability via the PDF file import function. CVSS score of a 9.8, CVE of 2022 45025. And secondarily, there was an issue with the Markdown Preview Enhanced v0.6.5 and version 0.19.6 for VS Code and Atom that allows an attacker to execute arbitrary commands during the GFM export process. That's also a CVSS score of a 9.8, CVE of 2022 45026. There's actually these next two that are actually right in line. I'm just going to keep on rolling with it. So if you use Microtech uh, networking gear, the OS that it runs is called Router OS. It's pretty powerful. Their gear is less expensive than other big brands out there, so they can do some pretty awesome stuff. I see this happening a lot in home labs that folks are putting in Microtech devices. So be aware that the Microtech Router OS, before stable v7.5, was discovered to contain an out of bounds read in the hotspot process. This vulnerability allows an attackers to execute arbitrary code via a crafted Nova message. CVSS score of a 9.8, CVE of 2022 45313, and they found the same in Microtech Router OS before stable v7.6. It also had the out of bounds read in the SNMP process, and that allowed attackers to execute arbitrary code via crafted packets. CVSS score of a 9.8, CVE of 2022 45315.
Node.js has a few. The LLHTTP parser in the HTTP module in Node v18.7.0 does not correctly handle header fields that are not terminated with CLRF. This may result in HTTP request smuggling. And so there's some weaknesses in the web crypto keygen. Vulnerability exists in Node.js 18 due to a change with entropy source in secret keygen traits. Do keygen in source crypto underscore keygen. There are two problems. It does not check the return value, and it assumes entropy source always succeeds, but it cannot and sometimes will fail. The random data returned by entropy source may not be cryptographically strong and therefore not suitable as key material. And then a third one, a OS command injection vulnerability in versions 14.21.1, 16.18.1, 18.12.1, and 19.0.1 due to an insufficient is-allowed host check that can easily be bypassed because is-IP address does not properly check if an IP address is invalid before making database requests, allowing rebinding attacks. Fix this issue, and the URL was incomplete and the new CB is a complete for the fix. Those are 8.1s to 9.8, with the parser being 2022 35256, crypto being 2022 35255, and the command injection being 2022 43548.
All right. Moving right along. See if anything else pops out to us at this point. If you're using Proxmox, the mail gateway looks like it had a couple of issues with the Proxmox virtual environment, and Proxmox mail gateway are vulnerable to an SSRF when proxying HTTP requests between PVE proxy and PVE daemon. An attacker with an unprivileged account can craft an HTTP request to achieve SSRF and file disclosure of any file on the server. Also, in the Proxmox mail gateway, privilege escalation to the root at PAM account is possible if the backup features have ever been used, because the backup files such as PMG backup year month date .star tgz have a 0644 permission and contains an auth key value. This is fixed in PVE HTTP server 4.1-3. And the CVSS score on that is 9.8, CVE of 2022 35508. And secondarily, the response header CRLF injection vulnerability in Proxmox virtual environment and Proxmox mail gateway web interface allows a remote attacker to set cookies for a victim's browser that are longer than the server expects, causing a client-side DOS. This affects Chrome-based browsers because they allow injection of response headers with a %0D. This is fixed in PVE HTTP server 4.1-3. That's a CVSS score of a 7.1, CVE of 2022 35507.
Sangoma's asterisk through 16.28.0, 17.x, and 18.x through 18.14.0, and 19.x through 19.6.0, an incoming setup message to add-on slash OOH323C source OOQ931.c with a malformed calling or called party IE can cause a crash. 7.5 and 2022 37325.
I completely missed which that project that was. Digital, I apologize. What was that?
The Asterisk, their
Asterisk.
PBX software.
Got it. Okay. Cool deal.
That's the one I used to do their dialing or their phone quest this last year.
Awesome. All right, scrolling on down through the last little bit. Anything else jump out at you, or are we ready to go on to our next stories?
I'm not sure what a Tenda AC6 is. Or there's a couple different ones. Tenda W30E, and then it switches to Tenda CN for the AC6. You recognize that? There looks like there's quite a few updates to those.
Absolutely. Oh, here we go. So UI, if you're using Ubiquity stuff, the UI Edge Max router, UI Edge Max Edge router firmware has a remote code execution vulnerability in the Edge routers version 2.0.9-hotfix 4 and earlier. It allows a malicious attacker with an operator account to run an arbitrary administrator commands. This vulnerability is fixed in version 2.0.9-hotfix.5 and later. CVSS score of an 8.8, CVE of 2022 43553.
I was not aware that VLC had a VNC module. It has an integer overflow in that module that allows attackers integer overflow in the VNC module in VLC player through 3.0.17.4 allows attackers, by tricking a user into opening a crafted playlist or connecting to a rogue VNC server, to crash VLC or execute code under some conditions. It's a 7.8 and a CV 2022 41325, and then a whole bunch of them. Some heap-based buffer overflows and use after freeze. Those are all in version 9 or versions prior to 9.0.0742. And then a second one 9.0.0765. And then for the use after free, those are before 9.0.0789 and 9.0.0882. 7.8s and 9.8s.
Time to go update your Vim, folks. All right. If you're running Zabbix in your home, for your home lab or whatever else, looks like there were two issues. There was with front end and Zabbix both. Both are at 9.8 on the CVSS score. Wow, try to say that 3 times fast. The first one is Zabbix front end provides a feature which allows admins to maintain the installation and ensure only certain IP addresses can access it. In this way, any user will not be able to access the Zabbix front end while it's being maintained, and possible sensitive data will be prevented from being disclosed. An attacker can bypass this protection and access the instance using IP addresses that's not listed on the defined range. CVSS score of a 9.8, CVE of 2022 43515, and the second one, which is in Zabbix proper, a firewall rule which allows incoming TCP connections to all programs from any source and to all ports is created in Windows Firewall after Zabbix agent installation with the MSI package. CVSS score of a 9.8, CVE of 2022 43516. All right, we ready to kick this over?
Sure.
If folks are looking for more areas to go look for vulnerabilities, you also have two other resources. You have the nvd.nist.gov, where you can go check out the last 20 scored vulnerabilities, IDs, and summaries, and the osv.dev.list, which is being updated constantly. So, with that, why don't you take up the first story?
Google releases dev tool to list vulnerabilities in project dependency. Called OSV Scanner, a new tool that allows developers to scan for vulnerabilities in open source software dependencies used in their project. The scanner draws data from osv.dev, the distributed vulnerability database for open source code that Google released in February of 2021, to offer relevant information about known security issues affecting open source code. So it goes through and identifies the different libraries and code used and tries to check for any vulnerabilities on the reported versions. The OSV scanner generates reliable, high-quality vulnerability information that closes the gap between a developer's list of packages and the information in vulnerability databases. The scanner uses openly distributed advisories from authoritative and reliable sources following the OSV schema for vulnerability triage in the installed package version. Currently, the OSV.dev service supports 16 major coding ecosystems, including the Linux kernel, Android, Debian, Alpine, PyPy, NPM, OSS Fuzz, and Maven. It's the world's largest open source vulnerability database, counting 23,000 advisories in 2022 alone. Oof.
Right.
So they're also looking to improve C and C++ vulnerability support, tackling a very challenging software ecosystem, and integrate standalone CI actions to allow easily scheduling of scans.
Cool deal. All right. Rolling on to. Let's see. Did I totally mess that up? Nope, that was the right one. Okay. I think that's all the section that we have for this week in vulnerabilities, correct?
Yep.
Cool. So moving into our next section, which is this week in privacy and lack thereof. Reporting from the EFF on December 15th. Dangerous Kids Online Safety Act does not belong in the must-pass legislation. Every year, Congress must follow through the enormous and complicated task of agreeing how to fund the government for the following year. The wrangling over spending often comes down to the wire, and this year, some senators are considering shoehorning the controversial and unconstitutional bill, the Kids Online Safety Act, or KOSA, into the must-pass legislation. Make no mistake, KOSA is bad enough on its own, but putting KOSA into the omnibus package is a terrible idea. Amendments aren't enough. The bill's sponsors have made last-minute changes to the bill in an attempt to assuage concerns, but these edits didn't resolve the fundamental problems. We've spoken about the harms of KOSA will cause at length and will remain in this current version. To recap, the KOSA's main provision contains a vague requirement that Online Services act, quote, in the best interests of the users, that the platform knows or should know it's a minor, end quote, by taking, quote, responsible measures, end quote, to prevent and mitigate various enumerated harms. These harms include mental health disorders, including, to name a few, the promotion or exacerbation of suicide, eating disorders, and substance use disorders, physical violence, online bullying, and harassment of the minor, and sexual exploitation and abuse. There is no doubt that this content will exist on the internet and that it is harmful, and that it can be harmful. But as we've written, there is no way a platform can make a case-by-case decision about the content exacerbates, for example, by eating disorders compared to the content which provides necessary health information and advice about the topic. As a result, services will be forced to over-censor to ensure young people and possibly all users if they aren't sure which users are minors. Don't encounter any content on these subjects at all. KSA's latest text still remains this glaring and unconstitutional flaw in its core. That's why we continue to urge Congress not to pass it, and senators should not consider the largest change, the additional of new limitations section, a solution to any of the bill problems. The new language reads, quote, "Nothing in subsection A shall be construed to require a covered platform to prevent or preclude any minor from deliberately and independently searching for or specifically requesting content." End quote. The new limitations section is intended to wave away KOSA's core problems by giving online services an out, but instead it creates a legal trap. The bill still creates liability for any service that delivers the content to the user because at its root, the service is aware that the user is a minor, or they should know in the language of the bill. The service is still on the hook for any content presented that is not on the user's best interests. This new language just begs the question, how can a site provide general information that a minor deliberately and independently searches for or finds on their services without that site then acquiring some knowledge that minors are looking for the information? Simply put, they cannot. The language just puts a fig leaf over the problem. This does go into more detail, and we've got a second opinion and or article from Ars Technica on the same issue, talking about big tech sues California, claiming child safety laws violate First Amendment. So go check out those stories. I think you got the next one up.
Actually, I think this one's still yours.
Oh, you're absolutely right. The Ars Technica one. So big tech sues California, claiming child safety law violates First Amendment. Sue claims guessing wrong about your young users harms and could cost companies $20 billion. In the last half of 2022 alone, many services, from gaming platforms designed with kids in mind to popular apps like TikTok or Twitter, catering to all ages, were accused of endangering young users, exposing minors to self-harm and financial and sexual exploitation. Some kids died, their parents sued, and some tech companies were shielded from their legal challenges by Section 230. As regulators and parents alike continue to scrutinize how kids have been hooked on favorite websites, destinations that could put them at risk or serious harm, a pressure that's increasingly harder to escape has mounted on tech companies to take more responsibility for protecting child safety online. In the United States, shielding kids from the online dangers is still a duty largely left up to the parents, and some tech companies would prefer to keep it that way. But by 2024, the first of its kind California online child safety laws is supposed to take effect, designated to shift some of that responsibility to the tech companies. California's Age Appropriate Design Code Act, or AB 2273, will force tech companies to design products and services with child safety in mind, requiring age verification and limiting features like autoplay or minor account discoverability via a friend-finding tool. That won't happen, however, if NetChoice gets its way. The Tech Industry Trade Association, with members of Meta, TikTok, and Google, this week sued to block the law, arguing that the law is not only potentially unconstitutional, but also poses allegedly overlooked harms to minors. Some tech companies don't like the California law. NetChoice said in a statement, because they allege that it violates the First Amendment many times over, they also say that it grants California unchecked power to coerce moderation decisions the government prefers. By keeping the law's terms purposely vague and never really defining what's considered harmful, even companies attempting to comply in good faith could find themselves charged with unforeseeable violations, the complaint alleges. So some tech companies have already taken steps to tighten up the online protections for young users this year. AB 2273 is based on a British online child safety law passed last year that prompted many tech companies to change their policies, including Google, Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest, TikTok, Snap, YouTube, as the New York Times reported. None of these tech companies immediately responded to ours when they had their request for comment. They do go into more detail, but if you're living in California, hey, do your duty and go contact your senators. Let your representatives know where you want them to land on this. Digital. Go for it.
From Senate to federal agencies, TikTok faces bans on government-issued device. So we talked about a couple of states imposing bans, including Alabama, Georgia, Idaho, and Utah, as well as Maryland, South Dakota, South Carolina, Nebraska. And I think there was also Texas as one of them, but they're not listed here, so I'm not sure what happened there. There's now a bill that has passed the Senate to ban it at the federal level on government devices. Kind of interesting to see all of these things suddenly start getting banned. And a couple people are wondering how this is actually going to work. So far, it's only imposed on government devices. So personal devices, it could still be used even if it's discouraged. And then there's a few places like universities that are trying to figure out how they handle it, especially since they use it for marketing and research. And it's interesting to see what different universities are doing with that issue.
Absolutely. We'll continue to see how this affects everybody else, right?
Of course, then there's some irony in this one. Senator
Yeah.
Rubio of Florida is heading a bipartisan effort to ban TikTok outright. Oh, I thought I was saying he was doing that, calling for the ban on TikTok.
Okay.
I misread that.
Gotcha. Interesting stuff, man. So they're just trying to go through and block it off of government issued devices currently.
Correct.
Gotcha. Alrighty then. I mean, of course, governments have got things handled via MDM devices, so they should be able to push or revoke or have a allow or block list, right?
In theory, yes.
Okay.
But there's definitely been a couple cases in the past where certain presidents have not particularly enjoyed that.
Mm.
Wasn't it Obama was the first to have an iPhone, and they had to set up a bunch of stuff to be able to support that?
Mm. Okay.
Because before that, it was all BlackBerry.
Back when they were the leading edge, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right. And I think you got the next story too, right?
Right. Yep. Twitter is considering forcing users to let the company sell their data and phone numbers to advertisers in a potential breach of Apple rule. So Twitter is in a bit of trouble right now and needs some funding. So what better way of doing that than more ads? And how do we get more money from more ads? More data. So that phone number that you use for two-factor authentication, let's just use that and get better ads. That way we get more money, can survive. So from the article, Twitter is working on plans to force some users to agree to data sharing or lose access to the app in a bid to save its ad business, according to Platformer. Elon Musk's platform, like Google and Facebook, currently allows users to opt out of personalized ads, but this option could soon disappear. Many users never turn this feature off in the first place, but the company is also considering forcing users to share more data, which then can be sold to advertisers. This includes sharing user location and phone numbers for targeted ads, even though the latter is necessary for two-factor authentication. Twitter would implement the new rules by presenting a full-screen notification, which can't be dismissed until users agree to share their data, and there would then be no chance to opt out. People familiar with this plan told Platformer that it would be rolled out to about 1% of American users to see the reaction before expanding it to all of Twitter accounts. So the fact that all the cybersecurity people have left, that's probably not going to be great because it's unlikely that any of them may see it. The plans could hit a snag in Europe because EU rules say that users have the legal right to withdraw data sharing permissions at any time. Under one plan being considered, users could only opt out if they subscribe to Twitter Blue, which costs at least $8 a month. But that would breach Apple's rules, which outlaw apps from forcing a choice between payment and advertising tracking. Last year, Apple introduced a feature which prevents apps from tracking users across different apps to build detailed customer profiles for advertisers. This cost Meta $10 billion in revenue, while multiple sources told Platformer that less than 35% of Twitter users opted. So,
Did
more reason for privacy conscious to not necessarily like Twitter.
Yeah, just another one. Just add it to the ongoing list that's been growing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because even before Elon had gone through and bought Twitter, there were multiple CEOs saying that, hey, Twitter is not financially profitable. We got problems, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, definitely not a new thing.
yeah. I think it's. I see the signs coming up on like small businesses saying, hey, under new management. Oh, same thing, just new management.
Mm-hmm.
But hey, when it's talking about selling your data, much like you know what? I will have to go through and post a link to this as well. Um, this was actually posted in our local hackerspace Discord, talking about how Amazon was offering to uh, give you a discount for them to be able to look at more information off of your device that their apps are installed on. Let me grab
Mm-hmm.
this and I'll add it to the links as we go through and talk about it. Let's see.
Yeah,
We
it
got
was $2 a day or $2 a month. Forget which.
$2 a month for letting the company track your phone data. So let me open this up. I'll go copy link and boom. I know this is completely outside of our regular stuff, but it is still pertinent to our conversation here. And I'll add it to. It's still in the privacy. Um,
So my question there is, how many more times do they make back than that to be able to offer that?
right.
Do they make $4 a month selling your data? Do they make $10 a month selling your data?
I just wow. I can tell you my privacy is worth more than $2 a month. That's for sure. So, according to the article from Business Insider, and this was reported back on December 5th, so it's 10 days old at this point. Some Amazon users will now earn $2 a month for agreeing to share their traffic data with the retail giant. Under the company's new invite-only ad verification program, Amazon is tracking what ads participants saw, where they saw them, and the time of day they were viewed. This includes Amazon's own ads and third-party ads on its platform. Through the program, Amazon hopes to offer more personalized ad experiences to customers that reflect what they have previously purchased, according to Amazon. Your participation will help brands offer better products and make ads from Amazon more relevant. The $2 reward only applies to Amazon users invited to participate in the program, though customers who didn't get an invite can get added to a wait list and potentially join later, an Amazon spokesperson told Insider. The spokesperson declined to tell Insider how the company decided who to invite. The deal is part of the Amazon Shopper Panel, an invite only program where selected Amazon customers can earn $10 a month if they upload 10 eligible receipts from purchases made outside of Amazon. Panelists can receive additional monthly rewards for completing short surveys. The ad verification program, currently limited to US and UK based Amazon customers, was launched in the wake of concerns from privacy advocates over how Amazon handles sensitive user data. Earlier this month, Wired reported that experts were anxious about how Amazon would handle the data it obtained through healthcare startup One Medical, and there have long been concerns of how the company uses its data from its smart home devices like Alexa and Ring, CNBC reported. When pressed on privacy concerns, an Amazon spokesperson referred Insider to the Shopper Panel FAQs and the Amazon's privacy notice. Participants can opt out of the program at any time, according to the FAQs, and the company also said it will delete sensitive information such as prescription information from pharmaceutical receipts in accordance to its privacy notice. Participants were or are able to delete receipts they've uploaded to the app whenever they want, per the notice. Exchanging user data for financial reward is nothing new. Back in 2016, Facebook launched a program that gave monthly $20 gift cards to users between the ages of 13 and 25 if they installed Facebook Research, a VPN app that tracked their online activity for market research. TechCrunch reported. In 2020, 2012, Amazon launched Screenwise, a program that gave volunteer users $5 Amazon gift cards with additional ones every 3 months for up to a year to download a Google Chrome browser extension that tracked what they did on the internet, reported by Ars Technica. Another part of the Screenwise program gave users $100 plus another $20 per month after signing up if they agreed to install a Google-provided router in their homes to track their behaviors, per Ars Technica. Just wow.
Mm-hmm.
So how much is your... You know what? This also leads me to a stupid short that I saw on YouTube Shorts as we're streaming here on YouTube. Yay! Talking about, hey, would you pay $20 for your boss to be able to see your Slack messages? And you can either say, yes, I'll take it, or we'll pass it on to the next coworker. And people were going, no, I don't want my boss to be able to see my Slack messages. And they got to like $3,000 and like, guess what? They can already see them. You don't need to pay to see it or take money to see it. When you're in an organization, they can see all of that. So, yay! Just be aware of how much privacy that you're giving away, folks. Because if you don't own it and it's not end-to-end encrypted, you have no idea who else is looking at it. So, slight tangent there. Let's talk about this week in security. And is this first one mine digital?
It is.
Cool. All right, so switching gears and going over to the hacker news, the new Go Trim botnet attempting to break into WordPress sites admin accounts reported on December 14th of 2022. A new Go-based botnet has been spotted scanning and brute forcing self-hosted websites using the WordPress content management system to seize control of target systems. The new brute forcer is part of the new campaign that has been named Go Trim because it was written in Go and uses : trim : to split data communicated to and from the C2 server. FortiGuard Labs researcher Eduardo, Jose, and Roy said. The active campaign observed since September of 2022 utilizes a bot network to perform distributed brute force attacks in an attempt to log in to a targeted web server. A successful break-in followed by the operator installing a downloader PHP script in a newly compromised host that in turn is designed to deploy the bot client from hard-coded URL, effectively adding the machine to the growing network. The article's got a cool video or visual of showing you the different stages of these steps. And it's present form, though, that GoTrim does not have a self-propagation capabilities of its own, nor can it distribute other malware or maintain persistence on the infected system. The primary purpose of the malware is to receive further commands from an actor-controlled server that includes conducting brute force attacks against WordPress and OpenCart using a set of provided credentials. GoTrim can alternatively function in server mode, where it starts a server to listen for incoming requests sent by the threat actor through the command and control server. This, however, only occurs when the breach system is directly connected to the internet. Another key feature of the botnet malware is the ability for it to mimic legitimate requests from the Mozilla Firefox browser on 64-bit Windows to bypass anti-bot protections, in addition to solving CAPTCHA barriers present in WordPress sites. Although this malware is still a work in progress, the fact that it is a fully functional WordPress brute forcer combined with its anti-bot evasion techniques makes it a threat to watch for, the researcher said. Brute forcing campaigns are dangerous and may lead to server compromise and malware deployment. To mitigate this risk, website administrators should ensure that user accounts, especially administrator accounts, use strong passwords. Got another one from the Hacker News saying the hackers bombard open source repositories with over 144,000 malicious packages. The NuGet, PyPy, and NPM ecosystems are known targets for the new campaign that has resulted in over 144,000 packages being published by unknown threat actors. These packages were part of a new attack vector with attackers spamming the open source ecosystem with packages containing links to phishing campaigns, researchers for Checkmark and Illustrata said in a report published Wednesday. Of those phishing related packages that were detected, 136,254 of them published on NuGet, NUGET, and 7,824 of them on PyPy, 212 of them on NPM. The offending libraries have since been unlisted or taken down. Further analysis has revealed that the whole process was automated and the packages were pushed over a short span of time, with the majority of usernames following convention of A through Z, 1900 through 2022. The packages themselves claim to provide hacks, cheats, and free resources in an attempt to trick users to downloading them. The URLs to the rogue phishing site were embedded in the package description. In all, the massive campaign encompassed more than 65,000 unique URLs on 90 domains. The threat actors behind this campaign likely wanted to improve the search engine optimization of their phishing sites by linking them to legitimate websites like NuGet. The researcher said this highlights the need to be cautious when downloading packages and only to use trusted sources.
Yeah, that one I was kind of surprised by when it's like, oh, here it's advertising all this like scam and hacking tools. It's like, who using NuGet is actually trying to go and find those? And then it finally mentioned about trying to do the SEO, and then it made a little bit more sense.
Right. So I'm familiar with the other ones like PyPy and such and NPM, but I had never heard of NuGet before.
That is well, not Microsoft's, but it was an open source project to try and create an app or RPM based function for Windows.
Got
It
so this
started
is
out
the
as
.NET
chocolatey.
thing.
Yep.
Oh, okay. It started out as chocolatey.
Yep. Yeah, and then they worked with
Interesting.
Microsoft to get it built in.
I did not realize that had come from that. Interesting.
Hmm. I'm pretty sure that's what it is.
Okay. Yeah, that is interesting stuff. Cool. Learn something new each day. All right. I think this next one is yours, correct?
It is. Two are. Because GitHub's rolling out some new features like requiring all users to enable two-factor authentication by the end of 2023. This is due to a number of breaches of open source projects that did not have it in place, as well as other different package or security concerns with open source libraries and code. They mentioned that, of course, two-factor authentication increases the security of accounts by introducing an additional step in the login process that requires entering a one-time code. For GitHub users, account takeover can lead to the introduction of malicious code for supply chain attack that, depending on the project's popularity, may have reaching impact. Imposing two-factor authentication as a mandatory measure for all GitHub accounts will make the platform a safer space where users can feel more confident about the quality of the code they download from repository. So, a couple months back, GitHub was originally going to only impose it on like the top X number of projects, open source projects, that they had to do it. But it looks like now, after some blowback about that, they're just saying, well, we'll just make everyone do it instead.
There you go. Because I think there were some folks who were just saying that they were being targeted, so like shut
Hmm.
down their GitHub account, moved it to a different name, and then spun it back up.
Hmm. Which, of course, produces even more legacy code and broken dependencies and
Oh, so
more
many.
security vulnerabilities.
Don't do that. Yeah, yeah. We got enough problems going on for sure.
Hmm. So they do say the feature rollout will be evaluated before it's scaled to larger groups, measuring onboarding rates, account lockout, and recovery, as well as support ticket volume.
Sweet.
Then the next thing was they are also rolling out a free secret scanning for all public repositories.
Yay!
So this was A security option that organizations can enable for additional repository scanning to detect accidental exposure of known types of secrets. It works by matching patterns provided by partners and service providers or defined by the organization. Each match is reported as a security alert in the repo's security tab or to partners if a partner pattern triggers the match. Ooh, that'd be fun. Amazon having a whole department just inundated with alerts because of all the AWS keys leaked. Previously, the secret scanning service was only available to organizations using GitHub Enterprise Cloud with a GitHub Advanced Security license. GitHub scanned repositories for more than 200 token formats, including API keys, authentication tokens, access tokens, management certificates, credentials, private keys, secret keys, and more. Since the start of this year alone, the company said it issued over 1.7 million alerts of potential secrets exposed in public repositories. Today, we're starting to roll out secret scanning to all free public repositories in the GitHub community for free. GitHub's Miriam Salakian and Zain Malik said on Thursday. We'll begin our gradual public beta rollout of secret scanning for public repositories today and expect all users to have the feature by the end of January 2023. A much faster rollout rate. Hopefully that'll lead to more security for everyone.
This is a net win because I know in
Mhm.
my organization, we were going through and doing the same thing because when you're talking about having these exposed credentials, secrets, or these files that shouldn't be uploaded, the turnaround time for bots going through and scraping GitHub, GitLab, or whatever other code repositories you can find, it's a small window. You're talking like 5 to 15 minutes, and it's at that point, depending on what permissions you've got for those special secrets, if you've got admin account, they could go through and spin up a lot of machines or heavy machines like heavy GPU, and they can cost you a lot of money real quick.
Mhm.
So this is a net win in my opinion for sure. In fact, I think we've talked about it in the past. If you wanted to do this for yourself, for your own code, there was a plugin that you could go through to do a pre-check before you upload it. So for folks interested in that, you can go back to our previous show notes and we'll try to post it here in our notes for today as well.
And of course, that would still be useful because if you do push it, then you have to deal with changing it all. So if you catch
Right.
it before the push, it'll save you a good bit of time.
Absolutely. All right. I think we're going down to our last couple stories here. So, from Hacker News on December 12th, researchers demonstrate how EDR and antivirus can be weaponized against users. So, high severity security vulnerabilities have been disclosed in different endpoint detection and response detection. Excuse me. Let's rephrase that. Different endpoint detection and response (EDR) and antivirus (AV) products that can be exploited to turn them into data wipers. This wiper runs with the permission of an unprivileged user, yet has the ability to wipe almost any file on the system, including system files, making computer completely unbootable. Safe Breach Labs researcher, or YAR, said. It does all that without implementing code and touches the target files, making it fully undetectable. EDR software by design are capable of continually scanning a machine for potentially suspicious and malicious files and taking appropriate action, such as deleting or quarantining them. The idea, in a nutshell, is to trick vulnerability security products into deleting legitimate files and directories on the system and rendering the machine inoperable by making use of specially crafted paths. This is achieved by taking advantage of what's called a junction point, aka a soft link, where a directory serves as an alias to another directory on the computer. Put differently, between the window and the EDR software identifies a file as malicious and attempts to delete the file from the system. The attacker uses a junction point to point the server towards a different path, like the C drive. The approach, however, doesn't result in a wipe, as EDRs prevent further access to a file after it was flagged as malicious. What's more, should a rogue file be deleted by the user, the software was clever enough to detect the deletion and stop itself from acting on it. The ultimate solution arrived in the form of a wiper tool dubbed AIKIDO, that triggers the privileged delete by creating a malicious file at a decoy directory and not granting it any permission, causing the EDRs to postpone the delete until next reboot. Given this new attack interval, all an adversary has to do is delete the directory containing the rogue file, create a junction point to the target directory to be deleted, and reboot the system. Successful weaponization of this technique could result in the deletion of systems like drivers, preventing operating systems from booting, and it could also be abused to remove all files from an administrator's users' directories. Out of 11 security products that were tested, 6 were found vulnerable to the zero-day wiper exploit, prompting the vendors to release updates to address the shortcomings. CVE 2022-37971, CVSS score was 7.1, and Microsoft Defender and Defender for Endpoint. CVE 2022-45797, CVSS score was 7.1, and Trend Micro's Apex 1. And CVE 2022-4173, CVSS score of an 8.8 on Avast and AVG antivirus. The wiper executes its malicious actions used in the most trusted entity on the system, the EDR or the AV. EDRs and AVs do not prevent themselves from deleting files. When we were setting up for the show tonight, Digital, we were talking about how this is a common issue, but it's really not talked about that much, right?
Mm-hmm.
So go, between when you're talking about signature-based or behavioral-based, keep an eye on your EDRs and your antiviruses for sure.
And hope open source projects don't use really basic commands that get triggered by your antivirus.
Yeah, that too.
Dealing with a false positive right now.
Yes. All right, the last story that I've got for tonight is from Ars Technica, saying that Microsoft discovers a Windows and Linux botnet used in a distributed denial of a service attack. MC Crash is specially designed to take down Minecraft servers and performs other DDoS attacks. Microsoft researchers have discovered a hybrid Windows Linux botnet that uses a highly efficient technique to take down Minecraft servers and performs distributed denial of service attacks to other platforms. Dubbed MCC Crash, the botnet infects Windows machines and devices running various distributions of Linux for use of the DDoS attack. Among the commands, the botnet software accepts one called attack MC Crash. This command populates the username of the Minecraft server login page with $environment random payload of a specific size, :-A. The string exhausts the resource of the server and makes it crash. The usage of the env variable triggers the use of the log4j2 library, which causes abnormal consumption of system resources, not related to the log4j vulnerability. Demonstrating a specific and high efficient DDoS method, Microsoft researchers wrote, a wide range of Minecraft server versions can be affected. Currently, MCC Crash is hard-coded to target only versions 1.12.2 of the Minecraft server software. The attack technique, however, will take down servers running version 1.7.2 through 1.18.2, which run about half of the world's Minecraft servers. If the malware is updated to target all vulnerable versions, its reach could be much wider. Modification in Minecraft server version 1.19 prevents the attack from working. The wide range of at-risk Minecraft servers highlights the impact this malware could have if it was specifically coded to affect version payloads beyond 1.12.2. Microsoft researchers wrote the ability of this threat to utilize IoT devices that are not often monitored as part of the botnet substantially increases its impact and reduces its chance of being detected. The initial infection point of MC Crash is Windows machine that has installed software that purports to give pirated licenses to the Microsoft OS. Codes hidden in the downloaded software serendipitously infects the device with malware that eventually installs malicious.py, a Python script that provides the main logic for the botnet. Infected Windows devices can scan the internet in search of Debian, Ubuntu, CentOS, and IoT devices that accept SSH connections. When found, the MC crash uses common login credentials in an attempt to run the same malicious.py script on the Linux device. Both Windows and Linux devices are then part of the botnet that performs the Minecraft attack, as well as other forms of DDoS attacks. The article included has an awesome step-by-step preview of how things are done, and a breakdown of the infected. And the breakdown of devices infected by MC Crash shows that most of them are located in Russia. Microsoft didn't say how many devices are infected, and company researchers said that they believe the botnet operators use it to sell DDoS services on crime forums. With that, go ahead.
1.12 is still fairly common in the modded scene.
Right.
So then I wonder if someone's going to release a patch for the older versions through mods, if they already know the fix from 1.19.
Maybe.
Because they definitely... I know there's a patch for Log4Shell for the older versions of Minecraft, because they also had that issue.
Right. So if you're running a Minecraft server, or if you are playing on one, you might want to see what version that you're running.
Mm-hmm.
And for the Linux side of the house, it looks like it was using common default login credentials. If you're running this on a Pi, and it's an older Pi, please go in and change the user and or the password so it's not just the default. And that's going to definitely help. All right, that was our last story for the This Week in Security section. Down in the cool tools this week, you've got one.
Yeah, Humble Bundle has teamed up with O'Reilly again for a bundle called the Gifts for the Technically Inclined Book Bundle. It starts at, or the top levels is at $18 and includes Arduino Cookbook, Raspberry Pi Cookbook, Machine Learning Pocket Reference, Creating Augmented and Virtual Realities, Tiny Machine Learning, Generative Deep Learning, using Async IO in Python, Smaller C, D3, Unity Game Development Cookbook, DNS and Bind 5th edition, R Cookbook 2nd edition, 97 Things Every Programmer Should Know, JavaScript Everywhere, and the 3rd edition of Mining the Social Web.
Cool deal. All right, with that closes out most of our things that we wanted to talk about. What projects are you working on that you want to share?
No, still mostly working on the CTFs, both the Advent of Cyber, which I'm caught up to day 15, as well as the Sans Holiday Hack Challenge, where I'm beating my head against a wall.
Yeah.
So gotcha. I think I'm about halfway through it. They've got 16 challenges. And I have 7 that I haven't completed. 1 I did complete, just not fully.
Okay.
They have additional challenges on the one.
Yeah, I was... Uh-oh. And we just lost Digital, so hopefully he'll come back here in a minute. I know currently I have not gone through and played any of KringleCon. Welcome back, Digital. Maybe.
Apparently I should not go into a hacking Discord during a podcast or Discord crashes.
Cool. I was going to say, I have gone through and done, I want to say the first 6 days of the Try Hack Me, but I'm going to jump on this weekend and start playing the Sans Holiday Hack Challenge with my boys. So that'll be fun. And we've got links to both of those in the show notes. One of the funny things I'm looking at when I'm looking at the URL, they've got 2022.kringlecon.com/snowflake present snowman Christmas tree Santa beard snowflake for the URL, since it accepts
Unicode characters.
Unicode characters. I've not seen many people do that.
Yeah, so it's actual the emojis in the URL.
Right? Exactly. Exactly. But when you copy and paste it to the notes, it then changes it to, it looks like it's probably the either hex code or ASCII code, right? For it instead.
Mm-hmm.
Fun,
Yeah, those are
fun.
probably the hex codes.
Right. Cool deal. Any other things that you wanted to share or talk about?
Mm, done a little bit more with my Wii, trying to get the ISOs running on it, because apparently all the stuff that it says it supports doesn't, but the ISOs work, so I can back up my discs and not have to keep switching them out if I want to change games.
Cool. Very nice. Let's see. For workshop Wednesday night, I was working on going through and updating our Darknet site. What we mentioned beforehand, and trying to get a few things set up for goals this next year of different projects. I've been trying to not take on new projects this last quarter so I get some finished and taken care of. And I've been encouraged by the wife to do the same to make sure I'm not just taking on more projects and never completing them, right? Um, and as I'm doing that, there's one that's now coming up that my wife is saying, hey, maybe you should take part of your break and just sit down and do that. I'm like, really? She's like, yeah. So more on that when I'm ready to share it, but that'll probably be into the new year. So should be fun to share that out once it's all said and done. Want to make sure we can go through and share information and projects that we're working on instead of just keeping it in our own heads, right? So looking forward to doing that. So that's all I've got for tonight.
That's everything I had.
Sweet.
Nope.
Cool. All right then. So this is our first showing on YouTube versus we've been doing this on Twitch for a while now. We've got our podcast on the Holon Network podcast site, which I will grab a link for if folks want to just listen to this. You can find this on Podbean. You can find us on Spotify and a few other places as well. So go check out the Holon Network podcast. You can find me on Twitter and on Mastodon at Gator_Byte.
And same thing, Twitter or the defcon.social Mastodon at digital_tinker.
And with that, we will not see you next week because we're going to take a break because that's going to be, No, we got next week. It's the week thereafter. We're fine. So we're going to see you same bat time, same bat channel next week.
See you then.
Bye.